I, 28M, never had a good relationship with my cousin Harry, 31M. Our history goes back to when we were kids. Harry lost both his parents in a terrible car crash when he was 5 years old. I was only 2 at the time, so I don't remember much about his parents, but my mom told me they were driving home from a party when their car slid off an icy road. Harry was at our grandparents' house that night, which probably saved his life. After the accident, my grandparents took Harry in and raised him as their own. At first, everyone thought this was the best solution. Harry would stay with family who loved him, and my grandparents, who had just retired, could give him their full attention. What no one expected was how this would change our family dynamics forever. From the moment Harry moved in, my grandparents treated him differently from me and my sister Shania, 25F. I guess they felt guilty about his parents' death or wanted to compensate for his loss, but it went way beyond normal grandparental love. Every birthday, Harry would get expensive gifts like gaming consoles or bikes, while Shania and I got cheap toys or clothes from discount stores. During Christmas, the pile of presents under the tree for Harry was always 3 times bigger than ours combined. The preferential treatment didn't stop at gifts. Harry could do no wrong in my grandparents' eyes. When we were in elementary school, Harry would often steal my toys or break them on purpose. If I complained, my grandparents would say I was being selfish and should learn to share with my less fortunate cousin. When Harry started fights with other kids at school, my grandparents would defend him, saying he was just working through his trauma. Meanwhile, if I got into any trouble, even minor things like being late to class, I was lectured about responsibility and setting a good example. Harry's behavior got worse as we entered our teens. He started drinking at 14, stealing alcohol from my grandparents' liquor cabinet. Instead of addressing the problem, they would just quietly replace the bottles and pretend nothing happened. By 16, he was regularly showing up drunk to family events. I remember one Thanksgiving when he threw up all over the dinner table and ruined the entire meal. My grandparents just cleaned it up and served him soup in his room, while telling everyone else to be understanding because he's been through so much. The real problem started when we hit college age. My grandparents had set up college funds for all 3 of us, me, Harry, and Shania. But by the time I graduated high school, they had spent most of my fund and all of Shania's on bailing Harry out of various troubles, paying for his wrecked cars, covering bounced checks, and hiring lawyers when he got caught drunk driving. They told us we could take student loans since we had 2 parents to help us, while poor Harry only had them. Shania and I ended up with massive student debt while Harry got a free ride to college. Despite having everything handed to him, Harry dropped out after 2 years. He claimed college was too stressful and he needed to find himself. My grandparents supported this decision and even gave him money to explore his options. He used this money to party and drift between dead-end jobs, never keeping one for more than a few months. Last year, my sister Shania got engaged to her boyfriend Tom, 27M. Tom comes from a good family and has a successful career in software development. Shania works as a pediatric nurse, and they saved for over a year to have their dream beach wedding. They planned everything carefully, wanting it to be perfect. A week before the wedding, Harry suddenly showed up at my grandparents' house. He claimed he had been sober for 3 months and wanted to make amends with the family. He gave this whole speech about how he had hit rock bottom and realized he needed to change. He even showed my grandparents an AA chip, though I later found out he bought it online. My grandparents ate it up completely. They started pressuring Shania to invite Harry to the wedding, saying it would be good for his recovery. Shania was really hesitant. The last family event Harry attended was our cousin Sarah's graduation party, where he hit on Sarah's 17-year-old friends and tried to fight her dad when he was asked to leave. But my grandparents played their trump card. They told Shania they wouldn't attend her wedding if Harry wasn't invited. They said she was being cruel and unforgiving, and that family should always stick together. Shania was heartbroken. She had always been close to our grandparents and wanted them at her wedding. After days of guilt tripping and emotional manipulation, she finally gave in and invited Harry. The wedding ceremony itself went okay, probably because Harry didn't have access to alcohol until the reception. But once the bar opened, things went downhill fast. During the father-daughter dance, I noticed Harry making multiple trips to the bar. By the time the speeches started, he was visibly drunk. When Tom's best man was halfway through his speech, Harry stumbled to the front and grabbed the microphone. What followed was a complete disaster. Harry started rambling about how Shania was always jealous of him growing up, how she would cry to our grandparents about the gifts he got. He accused her of marrying Tom for his money, saying she was just a gold digger like her mom. When Tom's father tried to intervene and take the microphone, Harry sucker punched him, breaking his glasses and giving him a bloody nose. The entire reception erupted into chaos. Harry started grabbing bottles from the bar and throwing them at guests. He knocked over the wedding cake, destroying the top tier that Shania and Tom were saving. When Shania started crying, Harry told her to stop being dramatic and tried to push her into the pool, saying she needed to cool off. If Tom hadn't caught her, she would have fallen in and ruined her dress. The wedding venue's security tried to contain him, but Harry was out of control. He was throwing chairs, breaking centerpieces, and screaming about how everyone had always been against him. My grandparents were trying to calm him down, telling everyone he was just having a bad day and needed understanding. That's when I'd had enough. While they were distracted, I went outside and called the police. When the police arrived, Harry completely lost it. He tried to run, then fought with the officers when they caught him. He ended up elbowing one officer in the face and kicking another in the shin. They had to physically restrain him to get him into the police car. My grandparents were hysterical. They blamed me for escalating the situation, saying I should have let them handle it within the family like we always had. They followed Harry to the station and got him a lawyer before they even checked if Shania was okay. Now Harry is facing multiple charges: assault, destruction of property, resisting arrest, and assaulting a police officer. The family is completely split. My grandparents haven't spoken to me since that night. They're spending their retirement savings on Harry's legal defense and telling everyone who will listen that I betrayed the family. Some relatives agree that Harry needed to face consequences, while others think I went too far by involving the police. Even Shania, whose wedding was completely ruined, says that while she's angry with Harry, she feels guilty about him potentially going to jail. I feel like I finally did what everyone should have done years ago: hold Harry accountable for his actions. But seeing my family torn apart makes me wonder if I made the right choice. Ida? Update 1 first, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Reading your responses helped me feel less crazy about my decision to call the police on Harry. A lot has happened in the past 2 weeks, and things have gotten much more complicated than I ever expected. Harry got out on bail 3 days after the wedding incident. My grandparents mortgaged their house to pay his bail and hire some hotshot defense attorney who specializes in cases involving addiction and mental health. They didn't even tell my parents they were doing this. We found out when the bank called my dad to verify some information since he was listed as their emergency contact. The night Harry got out, around 2 a.m., I woke up to someone pounding on my front door and screaming my name. I live alone in a small house I recently bought, and my first instinct was to call the police. But when I looked through the peephole, I saw Harry swaying on my porch, clearly drunk out of his mind. He was holding a half-empty bottle of whiskey and looked like he hadn't showered since getting out of jail. I told him through the door to leave or I'd call the police. This set him off completely. He started screaming about how I ruined his life, how I was always jealous of him, and how I turned the family against him. Then his threats got really scary. He said he was going to burn my house down while I slept, that he would make me regret ever being born. The worst part was when he said he knew my work schedule and would be watching me. I recorded everything on my phone while quietly calling 911. The police arrived within minutes and arrested Harry for violating his bail conditions. My neighbors had come outside by then, and several of them gave statements about his behavior. One neighbor even had security camera footage of Harry urinating on my car before he started banging on my door. The next day, my mom came over to check on me. She was really shaken up by everything and suggested we look through some old family photos to calm down, something we used to do when I was little and had a bad day. We were going through boxes in my spare room when we found something strange. In one of my grandma's old photo albums from before Harry's parents died, there was an envelope stuffed with legal documents. At first, we thought they were just old bills or insurance papers, but as we read through them, we discovered something shocking. The documents were adoption papers from when Harry was born, not from when his parents died. According to these papers, Harry's parents who died in the car crash weren't his biological parents at all. They were friends of my grandparents who took him in as a baby. His real mother was a teenager who couldn't keep him, and my grandparents arranged the whole thing through some private adoption agency. The papers showed that my grandparents actually financed the adoption and had some kind of guardianship agreement from the start. This explains so much about why my grandparents always favored Harry. They weren't just trying to make up for his parents' death, they felt responsible for his entire life. They had basically chosen him over their own grandchildren before we were even born. My mom was stunned. She had no idea about any of this, which meant my grandparents had kept this secret from everyone, including their own children, for over 30 years. We debated what to do with this information for hours. Part of me wanted to expose everything right away, but my mom suggested we talk to my grandparents first. When we confronted them with the documents, my grandmother burst into tears while my grandfather got angry and defensive. They finally told us the whole story. Harry's biological mother was actually my grandfather's niece, his sister's daughter. She got pregnant at 16 and begged them for help. Instead of supporting her as a single mother, they convinced her to give the baby up for adoption and arranged for their friends to adopt him. They swore the friends to secrecy and set up a trust fund for Harry. When Harry's adoptive parents died in the car crash, my grandparents saw it as their chance to finally raise him themselves. They admitted that their guilt over separating him from his birth mother made them overcompensate by giving him everything he wanted. They never told anyone because they were afraid it would disturb the family peace. I was disgusted by their secret keeping, but what really got me was their reaction when I suggested telling Harry the truth. They begged me not to tell him, saying it would destroy his fragile mental state and ruin his defense in court. They even offered to sign their house over to me if I kept quiet. When I refused to be bought off, they threatened to tell everyone that I was lying and trying to extort them. My sister Shania thinks Harry deserves to know the truth, especially since his biological mother is still alive, though my grandparents refuse to tell us where she is. Our parents are torn. They're angry about being lied to all these years, but they're worried that revealing everything now might push Harry over the edge. Harry's court date is next month. His lawyer is pushing for a plea deal, claiming that Harry's actions at the wedding were caused by the trauma of losing his parents. My grandparents are supporting this narrative, telling everyone how Harry has suffered so much loss in his life. Meanwhile, they're pressuring all the family members to write letters to the judge about what a good person Harry is deep down. I feel sick watching them continue to enable Harry's behavior with more lies. The truth about his adoption doesn't excuse any of his actions, but I believe he has a right to know who he really is. But is it wrong to tell him while he's facing criminal charges? Should I wait until after the trial? Or should I tell his lawyer so they can't use the orphan trauma defense? I'll update again after I decide what to do. Right now, I'm just trying to process everything while dealing with the fact that my entire childhood was basically built on a lie. Update 2. After much thought and discussion with Shania, I decided Harry needed to know the truth about his adoption. I couldn't stand watching my grandparents use his orphan trauma as an excuse for his behavior, especially when it was all based on lies they created. I arranged to visit Harry in jail, though my grandparents tried everything to stop me. They called the jail pretending to be my father, saying I wasn't allowed to visit. When that didn't work, they told Harry I was coming to mock him about his charges. Despite their interference, I managed to see him last week. Harry looked terrible. He'd lost weight, and his hands were shaking from alcohol withdrawal. At first, he just glared at me through the visiting room glass. I didn't waste time with small talk. I showed him copies of all the documents we found. The adoption papers, the legal agreements, everything. I even had a photo of his biological mother from when she was young, which I found hidden in another of my grandmother's albums. His reaction wasn't what I expected. Instead of being angry at our grandparents for lying, he completely twisted the situation. He started laughing, this weird, hollow laugh that gave me chills. Then he said this proved what he'd always known, that he was special and chosen while Shania and I were just born into the family by accident. He said our grandparents picked him because they knew he was better than us, and we'd spent our whole lives trying to steal their love from him. When I tried to explain that his biological mother was actually family and might want to know him, he became enraged. He slammed his fists against the glass and screamed that I was making up lies because I was jealous. The guards had to remove him from the visiting area. 2 days later, Harry's lawyer contacted our family. Harry told him about the adoption documents and created this whole new defense strategy. He's now claiming that learning about his adoption triggered a mental breakdown, which is what caused his behavior at the wedding. His lawyer is arguing that Harry has been suffering from severe emotional and psychological trauma his entire life without knowing why, and that's what led to his addiction issues. My grandparents are fully supporting this new strategy. They wrote long statements about how guilty they feel for keeping the truth from him, and how they can see now that their secret damaged his mental health. They even got some psychiatrists to evaluate Harry and diagnose him with various trauma-related conditions. The worst part is, it might actually work. The prosecutor offered Harry a really generous plea deal, 6 months in a private rehab facility followed by 3 years of probation. No jail time at all. The only condition is that the whole family needs to write letters to the judge supporting Harry's rehabilitation plan. My grandparents are going all out to make this happen. They've already written their letters, painting Harry as a victim of circumstances who just needs help and understanding. They're pushing everyone in the family to do the same. They even mortgaged their vacation house to pay for the fancy rehab facility they want to send him to. Shania is considering writing a letter. She says that while she's still upset about her wedding, she feels partially responsible because she invited Harry despite knowing his problems. Tom is furious about this. He's still angry about his father getting punched and doesn't want Shania involved at all. My parents are also divided. My mom thinks Harry needs serious help and rehab might be better than jail. But my dad says Harry has manipulated the family for the last time and needs to face real consequences. They've been arguing about it constantly. Meanwhile, my grandparents have taken their manipulation to a new level. Last week, they updated their will. They told the whole family that anyone who doesn't support Harry's rehabilitation plan will be disinherited. They're using my grandfather's heart condition to guilt everyone, saying the stress of Harry going to jail could kill him. The final straw came yesterday. Harry's lawyer sent me a letter threatening to sue me for maliciously revealing private adoption information if I don't write a letter supporting Harry. The lawyer claims I caused Harry severe emotional distress by telling him about his adoption without proper psychological support present. I'm standing firm in my decision not to help with Harry's defense. He assaulted multiple people, destroyed property, and threatened me at my house. Finding out he was adopted doesn't change any of that. But now I'm worried about potential legal trouble for myself, and the family pressure is getting worse every day. The judge will make a decision about Harry's plea deal next week. I'll update again once we know what's going to happen. Update 3. I know it's been a while since my last update, but a lot has happened and I needed time to process everything. The judge accepted Harry's plea deal. He went to a luxury rehab facility that cost my grandparents nearly $50,000 per month. For 3 months, everything seemed to be going well. Harry was attending therapy sessions, participating in AA meetings, and even started helping out with group sessions for other patients. My grandparents visited him every week and came back with glowing reports about his progress. They kept pushing me and Shania to visit him, saying he was like a completely different person. Even some of our cousins who visited said he seemed genuinely changed. They said he was working out regularly, reading self-help books, and talking about wanting to make amends with everyone he had hurt. Shania eventually gave in and visited him in month 2. She said he cried and apologized for ruining her wedding, promised to pay for a vow renewal ceremony, and even wrote a letter of apology to Tom's father. I still refused to see him, which made my grandparents increase their pressure on me. They said I was being stubborn and preventing the family from healing. Then, last month, Harry completed his rehab program. He moved in with my grandparents since one of his bail conditions was having a stable residence. He got a job at a local warehouse and started attending daily AA meetings. My grandparents were ecstatic, telling everyone this was the fresh start Harry needed. Everything fell apart last week. Tom and Shania were woken up at 3 a.m. by their security system. When they checked their cameras, they saw Harry in their driveway, slashing their car tires. Tom called the police while Shania called our grandparents. By the time anyone arrived, Harry had not only destroyed all 4 tires but had also spray-painted "Gold Digging Bitch" on the side of Shania's car and "Family Traitor" on their garage door. The police found Harry passed out in his car 2 blocks away with empty vodka bottles and a bag of pills. When they arrested him, he was screaming about how Shania and I had stolen his inheritance. Apparently, he had overheard our grandparents discussing changing their will back to include all grandchildren equally since he seemed to be doing better. This sent him into a rage. But here's the worst part, we discovered that Harry had been planning this for weeks. The police found a notebook in his car filled with disturbing writings about getting revenge on the family. He had detailed plans to burn down both my house and Shania's, lists of our daily schedules, and information about our workplaces. He'd even taken photos of Shania's house and drawn X's over all the windows. My grandparents are still defending him. They claim the stress of maintaining sobriety triggered a relapse and that we should give him another chance. They've already contacted his lawyer about getting him into another rehab program instead of jail. They're even trying to blame Tom for calling the police instead of handling it within the family. I've had enough. I've blocked my grandparents' numbers and told my lawyer to send them a cease and desist letter if they try to contact me. Shania and Tom are moving to another city for a fresh start. They're not telling anyone in the family their new address except our parents. Some relatives are calling us heartless, saying family should always forgive. But after finding those revenge plans, I can't risk having Harry in my life anymore. Maybe he'll get help and truly change someday, but I won't be around to find out. My parents understand my decision, though they're sad about the family being torn apart. Harry is back in jail awaiting a hearing for violating his probation. This time, I hope he faces real consequences for his actions. As for me, I'm looking forward to building a life without the constant drama and manipulation. Sometimes cutting ties is the only way to find peace.